Imagine for a second, you're sitting in a foreign emergency room and you are, clutching your chest.
Oh, man. Terrifying.
Right. It's a nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
You've got maybe 30 seconds to explain what is happening to a doctor who doesn't speak your native language.
Right.
And suddenly the difference between saying, I had pain and I have had pain, it's no longer just some, boring grammar exercise.
Not at all.
It's literally the difference between getting a mild prescription and getting a defibrillator.
Yeah, the margin for error just completely vanishes in that moment.
Yeah.
I mean, in casual conversation, a misplaced verb tense might get you a strange look.
Sure.
But in a clinical setting, an ambiguous timeline can send a physician down a diagnostic path that wastes the very few critical minutes you might actually have left.
Exactly. And that is exactly where we're starting today. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are looking at a stack of material that, on the surface at least, it might seem entirely benign.
Yeah, it looks pretty standard.
Right. It's an educational module designed to teach English as a second language, and it specifically focuses on health, medicine, and well-being.
Mm-hmm.
But we are not treating this like a study guide today. We are looking at this curriculum as an artifact.
I love that approach.
Because when you strip away the classroom exercises, what you're actually looking at is, it's a fundamental blueprint of how human beings encode their physical vulnerabilities into language.
And viewing it as a cultural artifact changes the entire reading.
Totally.
It really does. It reveals the psychology behind how we distance ourselves from mortality, the public health crises that are literally embedded in our vocabulary.
Yeah.
And just the sheer mechanics of clinical communication.
Yeah.
The module inadvertently maps out this intersection of linguistics and survival.
So let's start with the foundational vocabulary of illness, because the text makes some very, very deliberate choices about what words learners need to memorize.
Right.
And it meticulously separates terms that, let's be honest, a lot of native speakers lazily use interchangeably.
Oh, guilty.
Absolutely.
Right. Like the distinction between a symptom and a diagnosis, for example.
Yeah.
The best way to visualize the textbook's approach here, I think, is to think of a symptom as the check engine light on your dashboard.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
It's just a surface level indicator that a system is failing. So a cough, a fever, sudden fatigue.
Yeah, and then the diagnosis would be the mechanic actually plugging a computer into your car and generating the specific error code.
Exactly.
The text is forcing the learner to understand that, going to a doctor and just reciting a list of symptoms is only the first half of the transaction.
Right, you're just presenting the check engine light.
Exactly. You're saying, hey, it's blinking. But the diagnosis is the identification of the actual disease that's causing the light to blink. And confusing the two, which we do a lot, it often leads patients to seek treatments that really only put black tape over the dashboard light, without actually fixing the engine. Oh man, that is so true. Just taking cough medicine for a serious lung infection or something.
Exactly.
Which perfectly transitions into another really hard line that this curriculum draws. It explicitly defines the difference between a virus and bacteria.
Yeah, it is a huge point of this.
It does. It describes a virus as a rapid spreading organism causing things like the flu. And we all know the biological difference, broadly speaking, but what stood out to me is why an English language module spends so much real estate drilling this specific distinction into the minds of language learners.
Right, because it's not a biology textbook.
Right.
What it is, honestly, is a public health intervention disguised as a vocabulary lesson.
Oh, wow.
The module specifically notes that antibiotics are used to kill bacteria, not viruses. So by cementing this linguistic boundary really early on, the curriculum is essentially attempting to combat the systemic misuse of antibiotics.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Because think about it. When a patient lacks the vocabulary to distinguish between a viral infection and a bacterial one, they go to a clinic and they're demanding antibiotics for a common cold.
Which is viral.
Exactly. And the doctor, who's facing a language barrier and a really frustrated patient, might just prescribe them just to end the consultation.
Just to get them out the door.
Right.
And that careless language use, that breakdown in communication, directly contributes to antibiotic resistance.
It does.
It's fascinating that teaching someone proper English definitions might actually be like a frontline defense against superbugs.
It really is. It's language as public health policy.
Yeah, but the text doesn't just focus on these cold clinical definitions. It also teaches idioms, which I found really interesting.
Oh yeah, the idioms section.
It encourages learners to use phrases like feeling under the weather or, coming down with something.
Well, consider the psychology of those phrases, right?
Right.
We use idioms to soften the biological reality of our bodies failing us.
Oh, that's deep.
Because saying, I have a systemic viral infection, it forces you to confront your vulnerability.
It sounds so intense.
It really does. But saying, I am just a bit under the weather, it shifts the blame to an external, temporary force.
The weather.
The weather, exactly.
Yeah.
It acts as a linguistic shield. We distance ourselves from our own mortality by burying it in these cozy, colloquial metaphors.
We want the sickness to sound like a passing rain cloud, not, a defect in our biology.
Precisely.
But when things do get serious, we have to drop the idioms. We can't use them anymore.
No, you can't.
And the module's reading comprehension section highlights the moment in history when humanity finally found a way to fight back against the most lethal bacterial infections.
Yes.
We have to talk about Alexander Fleming and the discovery of penicillin in 1928.
The text leverages the Fleming story to introduce complex medical history, but what's really interesting is how it frames it around the concept of scientific serendipity.
Right. And the story is famous. I mean, Fleming goes on vacation, he leaves his laboratory dishes sitting out in his very messy workspace, and he comes back to find that a mold, penicillium, had started growing on one of the plates.
Just completely by accident.
By accident. And what the text highlights is that the mold was actively killing the bacteria around it. But instead of just summarizing the timeline, let's actually look at the mechanism of what Fleming stumbled upon. Like, why did a random mold kill a lethal bacteria?
Well, it comes down to microscopic resource competition. Fungi and bacteria have been fighting this kind of turf war on this planet for billions of years.
Wow.
Yeah, they compete for the exact same nutrients in the soil and in organic matter. So over millions of years of evolution, the penicillium mold developed a chemical weapon.
A chemical weapon?
Basically, yeah. It secretes a compound that essentially inhibits bacteria from synthesizing the structural molecule in their cell walls.
Okay, so what does that actually mean for the bacteria?
It means as the bacteria try to grow and divide, their walls become really weak, and the osmotic pressure causes them to literally burst open.
Oh my gosh. They just explode.
Pretty much.
So Fleming just happened to walk in on a microscopic battlefield where the fungi were winning.
Exactly. He didn't invent the weapon. He just realized we could harness it.
That is wild to think about.
And the curriculum uses this to pose a broader philosophical question to the learner. It emphasizes what is known in science as the prepared mind.
The prepared mind.
Right. The accident was the mold landing on the dish. That was chance. But the genius was Fleming's curiosity to actually isolate it, test it, and recognize its implications for human biology.
He didn't just throw the dirty dish in the sink.
Exactly. The textbook is teaching language through the lens of critical thinking here. If you just look at the messy desk, you see a ruined experiment.
Yeah.
But if you have a prepared mind, you see the dawn of the antibiotic age.
And that era fundamentally shifted the English language, too. I mean, before 1928, a minor scratch from a rose bush could lead to a fatal blood infection.
Oh yeah, people died from a shaving cut.
Right. Surviving an infection was often just a matter of luck and having a really strong immune system. But after penicillin, an entirely new lexicon had to be injected into the public consciousness. Words like antibiotic, broad spectrum, and eventually, unfortunately, antibiotic resistance.
Which brings us back to the caveat that the text includes.
Right.
It clearly warns that doctors recommend against taking antibiotics when they're not necessary, because bacteria, as living organisms, they adapt.
Right. The turf war continues.
It does. The ones that survive the mold's chemical weapons, they pass on that resistance to the next generation. We are actively observing evolution, and the text ensures the language learner understands the actual stakes of that arms race.
So we have the history of the drugs, we have the vocabulary of the symptoms, but surviving an infection requires more than just the existence of penicillin.
It does.
It requires you, the patient, successfully communicating to a physician that you need the treatment.
Which brings us to grammar.
Yes. This is where the curriculum makes a brilliant, if maybe a little dry, structural pivot. It uses doctor-patient dialogues to teach one of the most notoriously tedious subjects in language learning, which is verb tenses.
Specifically, the contrast between the present perfect and the past simple tenses.
Right. And let me push back on the premise here for a moment.
Okay, go for it.
If I am sitting in an emergency room triage chair, right, my heart rate is spiking, I am in visible distress, does a triage nurse really, truly care if I use the present perfect tense? I mean, it feels a bit like grading a drowning person on their stroke technique.
That's a fair point, but no, the nurse is absolutely not grading your grammar.
Okay.
But they are parsing the timeline that your grammar dictates. Tenses are the architecture of time in the English language.
Okay, I like that, the architecture of time.
Yeah, let's look at the cognitive load on a doctor during triage. They have to rapidly separate historical background noise from active, immediate threats.
Right.
So if a patient uses the past simple and says, I had chest pain, they're communicating a closed chapter. It happened, and it ended. It is part of their medical history.
Okay, but if they use the present perfect and say, I have had chest pain for 3 hours.
Then the patient is communicating an ongoing active threat.
Ah, I see.
The event started in the past, but it is connected directly to this present moment. The grammatical formula, have or has plus the past participle, it functions as a clinical flare gun.
A clinical flare gun. That is such a vivid way to describe it.
It tells the physician that whatever mechanism is causing the pain is still operating right now in the waiting room.
It is the grammar of triage.
Precisely. If a doctor asks, have you ever broken a bone? They're using the present perfect to query your entire life experience up to today.
Great. They just want to know if it's ever happened.
Exactly. But if you reply, I broke my leg in 2020, you use the past simple to drop a pin on a specific completed event.
Okay, I get it now.
The textbook is teaching these tenses not as arbitrary rules to pass the test, but as a critical code required to construct an unambiguous timeline of suffering.
Wow.
When a diagnosis relies on knowing exactly when a symptom began and whether it is stopped, grammar can actually dictate the treatment plan.
That is wild. And the module applies this code in a speaking and writing workshop at the very end of the chapter.
Yeah, the role play section.
Right. It sets up various high-stakes role plays for the students. Situation A is a flu patient, situation B is a sports injury, but situation C, that one really caught my eye.
Oh yeah, the peanut allergy one?
Yes. The prompt is literally, a person has difficulty breathing after eating peanuts, and it asks students to act out the scenario and determine if it constitutes an emergency.
Well, it forces the learner to confront anaphylaxis, which is a severe life-threatening allergic reaction.
Yeah.
The throat swells, blood pressure drops, and medical intervention is required in minutes.
And the clinical tone of the textbook is just really striking here because it outlines these neat, orderly, conversational turns for student A and student B to practice asking about symptoms.
Very polite.
Right, very polite. But let's look at the psychological reality. In a true medical emergency, when someone you love is suddenly turning blue from a peanut allergy, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logical language retrieval, it often just shuts down.
Oh, completely.
Panic takes over the limbic system. Nobody is politely checking their verb conjugations while someone is choking.
No, of course not. But the artificiality of the classroom role play is exactly the point.
Wait, how so?
Well, you cannot simulate the limbic response of true panic in a language cafe.
Obviously not.
However, what the curriculum is trying to build is cognitive muscle memory. Under extreme stress, complex sentence generation fails. Your brain just can't do it. So you revert to your most deeply ingrained neural pathways.
You fall back on your baseline training.
Exactly. If the vocabulary words for allergy, breathing, and the phrase call an ambulance have been repeated enough to become automatic, they can bypass the cognitive block caused by panic.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So you don't need a perfectly constructed present perfect sentence in that specific, highly stressful moment.
No, you just need the core data points to survive the dispatch call.
Right.
The textbook defines an emergency as a situation requiring immediate medical attention because it wants the learner to cognitively link specific symptoms with the automatic response of seeking help.
And that makes the shift at the very end of the module so much more impactful.
Yeah, the health tip.
Because after spending all this time teaching the learner how to describe diseases and how to outline the timeline of pain and how to call an ambulance during allergic reaction, it just drops this completely different philosophical framework on them.
It does.
It highlights the phrase, prevention is better than cure.
It is a radical shift, honestly, from a reactive mindset to a proactive one.
Yeah, because everything in the preceding chapters assumes the biological failure has already occurred.
Right. You caught the virus, You broke the bone, you ate the peanut.
The entire lexicon we just discussed is built around fixing a broken machine.
But introducing the philosophy of prevention mirrors the ongoing evolution of modern healthcare models. I mean, historically, medicine was almost entirely reactive. You waited until the check engine light came on, and then you sought a diagnosis.
Right.
But the textbook's health tips section emphasizes regular hand washing, hygiene, and lifestyle habits.
It's quietly suggesting that the ultimate mastery of health doesn't lie in knowing how to ask for antibiotics, but in structuring your habits so you never need to learn the vocabulary of the emergency room.
It empowers the learner. It says, look, here are the tools to navigate the worst-case scenarios, but here is the daily philosophy to avoid them altogether.
It's almost like a cheat code for life.
It is. A proactive healthcare model focuses on diet, on exercise and early diagnostics to catch anomalies before they even manifest as symptoms. It shifts the financial and physical burden away from acute care and towards sustained well-being.
Wow.
And by embedding this in an English lesson, the curriculum is basically exporting a modern medical paradigm right along with the language.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating prompt that the source material uses as its final reflection exercise for the students. It asks them to discuss what the next great medical discovery will be.
And that is a huge question. Because if we look back at the impact of 1928, the discovery of penicillin didn't just alter human biology, it demanded an entirely new framework of language to explain what was happening inside our bodies.
Exactly. And that is the thought we want to leave you with today. We are standing on the edge of breakthroughs in CRISPR gene editing, personalized mRNA vaccines, and artificial intelligence diagnostic models that can predict diseases years before the first symptom even appears.
It's incredible.
It really is. So if Alexander Fleming's messy desk gave us the lexicon of antibiotics and resistance, wait, let me rethink how I want to phrase this.
Go for it.
If that messy desk changed how we talk about illness for a century, what completely new words, what grammatical structures and concepts will we have to invent to describe the medical realities of tomorrow?
When our ability to manipulate the human body evolves beyond our current understanding, the language we use to describe ourselves is going to have to evolve with it.
Definitely.
I mean, we might need new ways to communicate time if diseases are cured before they even begin.
Oh, that is a crazy thought.
Yep.
How do you use the present perfect for a disease you never actually had?
Right. The grammar of triage becomes the grammar of prevention.
Well, until we invent those words, keep a close eye on your symptoms. Remember the difference between a check engine light and a diagnosis.
Yes, please do.
And if you are heading out on vacation, maybe leave a few unwashed dishes in the sink. You never know what microscopic turf war you might start.
Might just change the world.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.